And we are off. What's up, everybody? I am finally back with my Carrabassett Backcountry Cycle Challenge video, such as it is. I apologize that this took so long to get out, and part of the way that I am getting it out is I'm just going to do a live commentary for some sections of this video. So the stuff that you hear me saying right now is not written like it usually would be. I'm just going to kind of talk through things as I'm seeing them. So I apologize if this is less eloquent, but yeah. Now, as you can see, I did not even attempt to kind of start at the front. I'm not like smashing super hard here. I didn't try to carve out a position at the front. And the main reason for that is just that, like, I know a lot of these people are faster than me. A lot of these people are more skilled than me. My goal here is just to finish. And I'm trying to finish the 100K, so there's plenty of time left to go. No reason for me to just blow myself out and burn matches right at the beginning. But it was really cool. This was my first ever mass start race, because everything I'd done before this has been enduros or things like the Mountain Mayhem race that's kind of a different individual format. It's not like a race in the same sense as this. So that was really cool. As you can see, I'm getting passed by all kinds of people. Jumping into some of the single track. The way that the course worked this year, there was a big loop that you did twice, but there was also this kind of like starting loop that you did once before you started the main big loop. So you go around this little starting loop once and basically back to the beginning, and then you start the big loop, and then you do the big loop again if you're going to do the 100K. So this is kind of me cruising around the little starting loop just past my wife and daughter there cheering me on, which is really cool to have that like right at the beginning of the race. And you know, at this point, as you can see, I've already been passed by a ton of people. There are still some folks behind me as well, but this is several miles into the race already, so things have spread out a bit. And I'm really just trying to get kind of warmed up, get comfortable on the bike, and just sort of hopefully settle into what the race is going to be. I guess now is as good a time as any to also just say I apologize for the bounciness of the camera. This is a long race. It was a hot day, and I just wasn't going to wear the GoPro harness that I usually wear that holds the camera really, really steady. But it's hot, it's heavy, it's not a good choice for a 100K cross-country race. So I'm using a much lighter mount that just attached it to the Usui hydration pack that I was wearing. As you can see, it does not do as good a job of holding the GoPro in one position. And this would look way worse if it weren't for GoPro stabilization, obviously. But even so, you'll see a bit of bouncing up and down, so I apologize for that. So here we're now getting into the full loop, and it starts off with the brutal 50 climb, as it's known, because I think that trail is called 50. So this is kind of, as you can see, it's sort of like a kind of double track, kind of single track, pretty steep in some sections climb up what was intermittently wet, or in some spots just an absolute mud pit. So yeah, as you can see here, there's also spots that I'm walking just because what's the point of trying to even ride through this? $500, yeah. We're gonna walk. Ooh. I think for a lot of people, this climb is probably the first real indicator of like what this race is going to be like, why it's called the Carrabassett Backcountry Cycle Challenge, and just sort of a little bit of a wake up of like, here's what you signed up for, and it's gnarly. I make it this far.
This is amazing.
So when you get to the top of the 50 climb, then you're getting into, I think it's Hurricane Knoll, and you get into the first sort of actual downhill section of the course. At this point, I'm still sort of trying to recover from the climb. I know I also need to get a little bit of calories into me, because this is probably, I mean, I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, but this is probably 45 minutes into the race at this point with that starting loop, and then the climb up 50 was obviously not fast, partially because it's a long climb and partially because half of it was mud. But the conditions up here were not as bad, so this was, it was a bit nice to be on something that was flat, even probably a little bit downhill. Super graceful handling of that route by me there, of course.
So graceful. Slow is smooth. Smooth is alive. Through Hurricane and on Buckshot now, my sort of self-diagnosis was definitely correct in that I can keep up with people on the smooth stuff and even pass people on some of the climbs, but single track, everybody's faster than me. That's what it feels like. I would say I'm in dead last right now, except that I thought that a few times, and then people keep passing me, so who knows. But
So I knew this was going to be the case going in, but I wasn't actually really that worried about my fitness for this race. What I was more worried about was my technical skill and my ability to navigate the technical stuff with any kind of speed, or perhaps more clearly my lack thereof. And so that really, I could sort of feel that starting to bite me already on some of this sort of first descent section of the course. After you get down that sort of hurricane descent, then there's still a fair amount of the course that's kind of going back and forth through these more like fields and double track climbs and descents on that same side of the Carrabassett Trail system before you cross the road. So here I'm just trying to, any place where it's flat, any place where I can pedal and sort of put some speed in, I'm trying to do that because I know that I'm not going to be that fast through the bouncy, techie stuff like this where I'm sort of having to weave around. One thing that you probably can't see very clearly from this video is that all of this stuff was fairly wet. The grip actually was not bad, and plenty of people, I'm sure, were just riding this exactly the same as they always would. I'm never that fast on this sort of downhill techie stuff anyway, but especially when it's wet and I'm on a 120 millimeter bike with sort of borderline cross-country tires, not full cross-country tires, but borderline. I'm playing it safe.
But again, I gotta stop thinking about other people. Just ride my own race here. All right, so we had a minor disaster. The little toggle handle on the Usui hydration pack that I have just snapped off. So now you can't close it. So we're just dripping all of my onto my leg. I guess I gotta try to drink as much of it as I humanly can, but god damn, that is really annoying. And this is supposed to be like a good quality company.
Okay, so this is the part where the race kind of starts to fall apart for me, logistically, but more than logistically, psychologically. So I'm going to just kind of let this play out for a minute before I come back.
Oh, yeah, it's just pouring out. Oh my god, that's so uncool. Because there's no way. I mean, I have one bottle. I'm not sure I can get through this race with just that. Look at this just pouring out. All right, well, I gotta figure something out because this has now poured like a metric gallon of scratch into my. Look at this. Look at this. Usui. You. Oh my god. It's not even. Here, maybe I can demonstrate. So there's supposed to be a little handle right here, and you dial it to here. Now it's like wrapped all the way. Jesus Christ. Now I can't even move it. Okay, I can't even move it, but you can see it's like snapped off. You're supposed to dial it to here to close it, to here to open it. Or no, sorry, that might be vice versa. I can't remember. But either way, I tried to dial it one. It just opened up on me and snapped.
So yeah, this is me trying to fix things, and as you heard, having a full-on pity party for myself about this thing going wrong. And I guess kind of in my defense, it was really frustrating, and I did lose most of my nutrition and hydration. I would say I probably lost like 1.5 liters of that scratch high carb stuff mostly into my shoe. So that was not ideal for sure. Now, the truth is the 100K race has a time cutoff by which time on the second lap you need to get to one of the aid stations. Even if this hadn't happened, I don't know that I was on pace to make that time cutoff. It maybe would have been close. I think I probably wasn't either way, to be totally honest with you. However, at this moment, I wasn't really doing the math to know that. I just knew I knew it was going to be close either way. And so having this kind of really frustrating equipment setback was not what I was looking for. And it put me in a terrible headspace. It just kind of threw me off my game and out of the plan that I'd come into the race with. So watching it back now, none of this is really my proudest moment. And I think it's a good lesson for me about like psychological resilience and being more prepared in a race. I came in with a very clear plan, had talked about it with my coach. This is what I'm going to do. This is what's going to happen. And I wasn't as sort of like mentally prepared for something going wrong, especially something like that going wrong that's like kind of out of my control. I was prepared for the possibility of like me crashing or not being fast enough or something like that. I just didn't think that like my drink bag would break. It's just not a thing that really occurred to me. But what can you do? You got to keep going. Well, you don't have to keep going, but I did keep going, obviously. And so now I'm smashing down some of the fun downhill stuff that some of these trails I'd never ridden before.
Well, at this point I might as well just eat when I get to the bottom. And maybe see if I can do some kind of surgery on my shoe to unsticky it. Having to stop again. I just got to get this scratch out of my shoe. That's bizarre. I could have sworn there was like liquid water in there. I could feel it like floating around, but nothing came out. Well, I've accomplished nothing. This is tonic for the soul right here. So that you can't see around the corners. And I did just come across a hiker.
This was a really fun section. And honestly, like if the whole race had been like this, I would have been so stoked on it. It's just, like nice, flowy, single track where you can just hammer on the pedals and you're speeding through the forest, and or not really the forest, but sort of this nice kind of grassy, wooded area. Just really fun. If you've been to Carrabassett Valley at all, you probably know these little grassy loops trails. They're just super fun to zoom around on, especially in a context like this where you're not going to run into anybody riding the opposite direction. On a non-race day, you probably need to be a little bit more careful because there could be hikers, there could be bikers going in a different way. But during the race, you could be fairly confident that you're not going to see that. So just zooming along here, having an absolute blast. And probably recovering a little bit my psyche from the hydration pack going. Obviously, I was really frustrated and like angry and just self-pitying before, and I think by the time I got here, I would sort of moved on from that, kind of accepted it, and was just sort of like, okay, well, you know, it is what it is. We're gonna just keep racing and see what I can do, I guess.
Starting the Oak Knoll climb, just got past going the other direction by the guys who I think must be leading the 100K race. So Jesus Christ, they're so fast. I mean, that's absurd. They're probably, you know, I haven't looked at I'm not going to try to do the mileage math because I don't really want to look at how many miles I've done, but I would guess they're at least like 10, 15 miles ahead of me, maybe more. Oh, yeah. Finished Oak Knoll. Now this.
So a fairly merciful part of this race, I guess, is that most of it is in the woods, which, given that it takes place in the middle of July, is kind of important, especially after the long climb that leads up to this, and then suddenly you come out of the woods and you hit this really steep fire road climb, and my God, I was just getting absolutely baked by the sun. And suddenly, you know, there's no shade, it's beating down on you, and your heart rate's kind of like maxed out from just trying to stay upright on this climb. It's not, you know, I'm not moving fast, as you can see. I'm probably going about 2 miles an hour, but trying to keep the bike upright and not turn it into a hike. And, you know, at this point, you've already done a lot of climbing on both sides of the mountain, so you're already fairly tired. And yeah, this was one of my least favorite parts of the race, to be honest with you. Although there are some others, some that you've already seen, and there's one more coming up. Oh, I guess I gave up and started hiking. I didn't even remember that. But yeah, got too hot, I guess, and gonna take a hike.
Oh my goodness. You can tell I'm not riding that smooth.
So after some fun downhill that I didn't ride particularly well, we get into what was my absolute least favorite part of the race and the course, which was this super muddy, peppered with big rocks downhill section that, you know, I don't know how well it picks up in the video, but there were parts of this that really felt like I'm just riding in a stream, in like a pretty shallow stream with big rocks and mud, and I don't know, this type of riding just isn't particularly fun for me in any context. I know that like they put this into gravel races, this sort of stuff too. I just don't find it enjoyable. Like, I like a technical challenge, but like sliding all over the place on mud, I guess it's technical, but it's, I don't know, it just feels like sort of random to me. I do kind of like being out there, and like, you know, it's fun to end a ride covered in mud, right? You feel cool. But the actual experience of like riding through this stuff is just not, I just don't enjoy it. It is true to the name, you know, Carrabassett Backcountry Cycle Challenge. This felt like this is real backcountry mountain biking out here. But it also felt like this isn't a trail. Why are we doing this? So I was very, very happy to be free of it. But as I recall, I am not actually free of it yet.
Sound of a goddamn train.
Yeah, you can see we're right back in the thick of it, and you can see how wet it is. I mean, yeah, it's probably,
mother.
From my memory of it, it was even worse than kind of how it looks in the video, but it doesn't look good in the video. And while other sections of trails were kind of wet because it had rained recently, this is the only one that felt like we're just riding down like the drainage line, like the fall line of the mountain where all the water runs down. Yeah, this is the part where it gets like super rocky in addition to the mud, and it feels like we're just riding in a riverbed here.
Yeah, this is just a goddamn river. Okay.
So finally free of that, and this is another part of Carrabassett that I've never ridden before because it's pretty far out from kind of the main trail system. But it turns out there's some really great stuff out here. So here you can see there. This is probably my favorite part of the whole race, to be honest. Is out there. I forget what this trail is called, but you go down that horrible mud river thing, and then eventually you get to this single track that just like it's flowy, it's smooth, it's fast, and you can just hammer on the pedals, fly through it, and it was I was having an absolute blast out here. This part was amazing.
Anyway, just hammering while I can. Some beautiful easy miles here. More climbing through an uphill mud slog here.
So at this point, after another bit of climbing, we've now looped back into Newton's Revenge, and I believe that's what I'm riding right now, going downhill. I probably won't add a ton of commentary here, and I may not include a ton of footage either, because this is stuff that I've shown in previous Carrabassett Valley videos. There's not that much that's interesting to watch in the context of the race. And as you can see, you know, this is a 100K race. There were a lot of people in it. At this point, I think there are still people behind me, but the race is very spread out. There were those guys that passed me, you know, ages ago that must have been 10, 15 miles in front of me before I even started climbing this side of the mountain. And then there are people, there are some folks behind me as well, I believe. So it, just because of the nature of the course and because of the length of the course, it is a race and you have that mass start, but at a certain point it kind of becomes, unless you're on the pointy end, which I was not at any risk of being, you're kind of just out there riding for yourself.
I think a couple of the fastest 50K people have started to catch up with me. One guy passed me flying, so he's probably on pace to win the 50K. She tried to keep up with him for a minute just for the fun of it, since I'm not finishing the 100K either way. Why not burn a match? But I was not successful. He was moving.
So now I'm coming out onto a section of the narrow gauge trail. I believe traditionally this is like a bigger part of the course, and it's a nice way to get at least a few easy miles in, because as you can see, this is just like beautiful gravel. It's almost paved. But this trail was damaged by the storms this year, so only a small section of it is open, so there wasn't that much of it on the course. But at this point, I knew time-wise from looking at my watch, there was no way that I just wasn't in a position anymore to be able to make that cutoff for the aid station on my second lap to be able to continue and finish the race. So like finishing the race is off the table. So I figured at this point, why not just hammer and just kind of try to go as fast as I can here and just enjoy sort of like the speed of it. It doesn't really matter if I burn a match because I'm not going to finish the 100K. And at this point in the race, I was kind of torn between, do I want to, even though I know I can't finish the 100K because they won't let me, because there is that time cutoff, should I start the second lap anyway? Should I just get to that aid station and then have them tell me to go back and get shut down, like just sort of out of spite, and to sort of put it out as much as I can? Or should I stop when I finish the first lap, say, hey, that's 50K, that's pretty good, and spoiler alert, I ended up doing the latter. The main reason for that is that my daughter was also racing in the kids race that day, and so I knew if I stopped after 50K, I would be there and I would have time to go actually watch that race, which I knew she would be excited about, and I wanted to see it. It turned out to be really important that I did that for other reasons that I'll talk about later. But at this point, I still haven't really decided what I'm going to do. So there's a part of my mind that's like, I want to just do as much of the second lap as I can, kind of just out of spite or stubbornness or whatever. In retrospect, I'm very glad I didn't, not for fitness reasons, but for other reasons that we'll talk about in a minute. But this is a cool little sort of trail through the woods right by the river here. As you can see here, I'm not really trying to smash it anymore. I'm not really going to do that on anything that's technical at this point. There's no point in hurting myself to get to the not finish line of a race that I am not going to finish as fast as possible. So, yeah, at this point, I'm kind of just riding and enjoying the view. So now I'm getting fairly close to the finish, or the end of lap 1 at least, which proved to be the finish for me. As you can see, here's the road crossing, and then there's a small section on the other side of the road here before you get back to that start-finish line. So now seems like a good time to kind of talk about, I guess first I should probably explain what happened here after this race, because I didn't actually, I'm not sure I even filmed the finish because the camera ran out of batteries, and then I didn't end up filming any kind of like my own personal reflections of how the race went on the day. So the reason for that, to make a rather long story short, is that my daughter ended up getting lost and being missing for a while in the kids' race, not due to any fault of the CBCC organizers or anything like that. It was just one of those things that happens, but it was really stressful for her and for my wife and for me, but it was a good thing that I was there. I was the one who ended up coming across her first, which I think was a good and important thing for her to have me be the first person that she saw. So it ended up being a really good thing that I stopped after one lap and I was there for that. So I guess I'll give you my post-game reflections on this now, about 4 months later, and it's basically boils down to, damn, that was hard. And it turns out it wasn't me. So a few days after the race finished, the race organizers sent out a post-race email, and I'm just going to read a little bit from that. That course, it was challenging on paper, but it looked good. It was also pretty dry a few days out, and then it wasn't. It was probably the hardest edition since the very early days. That may have been the last dance for the Trail 50, which is the 100K. Would anyone miss it? Stories are still coming in about folks puking in the last climbs and legendary mud. To everyone who rode 1 lap, 2 laps, the 25K, cheers to you. To Team DNF, and that's me, you weren't alone. Biggest team ever. Next year will be better. So, none of that is to say that this was like an impossible race. I'm not trying to make excuses for myself or whatever. Obviously, plenty of people finish the 100K. And if you're one of them, goddamn, man, that's amazing. That's impressive. Obviously, there were some really talented, super fit riders out there. I think my fitness was pretty good. The talent maybe was not there. But it was a particularly hard edition of this. So, yeah, brutal race. Will I be back? I think so. I don't know why. Maybe I'm a glutton for punishment, but I do think I want to see if I can do better, if I can go a little bit faster. I will say that next time, if I do it, even if there is a 100K or 50-mile version of the race, I probably will only do the 50K. If you're interested in this race, you should know that it sells out really fast. So, like, the day that the registration opens, whatever time it opens, I think it was 7 a.m. last year, like, you need to be awake at that time and you need to register immediately, because the 50K was certainly sold out within the first few hours, and I think even earlier than that.